Emma never planned on becoming a mother at 12. But as she sat on the cold apartment floor, rocking her newborn sister in her arms while their mother lay unconscious in the next room, she realized she didn't have a choice. No one was coming to help them. And if she didn't figure out what to do next, they wouldn't survive. Emma had always known that life was unfair, but she never expected to carry the weight of an entire family on her small 11-year-old shoulders. Their tiny apartment, wedged between a liquor store and an abandoned building, was barely big enough for 2 people, let alone 3. The walls were thin, the floors creaked, and the air always smelled faintly of dampness and cheap detergent. But it was home. Her mother, Sarah, was the hardest working person Emma knew. She had been pregnant for what felt like forever, but that hadn't stopped her from going to work every day. Cleaning houses, washing dishes in the back of a restaurant, sometimes even taking on overnight shifts at a laundry facility, she did whatever she had to do to keep food on the table. Emma had learned quickly that childhood was a luxury she couldn't afford. While other kids at school complained about homework and begged their parents for new toys, Emma spent her afternoons scrubbing the bathroom, cooking simple meals, and counting the last few dollars in her mother's coin jar to see if they could buy milk that week. She never complained. Complaints wouldn't change the fact that bills kept piling up, that their electricity got shut off at least once every few months, or that her mother came home too exhausted to even eat dinner some nights. Emma just did what needed to be done. But lately, things had gotten worse. Her mother had been struggling more than usual. She was always out of breath, always holding her belly with a pained expression when she thought Emma wasn't looking. Some nights, Emma would wake up to the sound of her mother crying softly in the other room, muffling her sobs with a pillow so she wouldn't wake her daughter. Then, there was the sickness. Not her mother's, her star. At first, Emma thought it was just exhaustion. She was always tired, her body felt weak, and she had lost her appetite. But then the nausea started. Every night, without fail, she would wake up with her stomach twisting in knots, barely making it to the bathroom in time. She never told her mother. The last thing Sarah needed was another problem to worry about. So Emma pushed through it. She took care of the apartment, helped her mother whenever she could, and pretended everything was fine. But deep down, she knew something was coming. Something she wasn't ready for. And then, one cold evening, her mother's water broke. It happened so fast that Emma barely had time to process it. One moment, Sarah was leaning against the kitchen counter, her hands gripping the surface as she winced through another sharp pain. The next, she was gasping, clutching her belly, telling Emma to get a towel, to call someone, to help. But who could they call? They had no family, no friends nearby, and no car to get to the hospital. In the end, a neighbor, a kind woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, rushed them to the emergency room, where Sarah was immediately wheeled away. Emma sat in the waiting area, her hands shaking, her stomach twisting with that now familiar nausea. Hours passed, and the fluorescent lights above made her head throb. Nurses came and went, people rushed past, but she just sat there, staring at the scuffed tile floor, too afraid to move. Then, finally, a doctor approached her. "Your mother is stable," he said, his voice kind but tired. "And your baby sister is healthy. You can see them now." Emma didn't realize she had been holding her breath until that moment. She followed the doctor down the long, sterile hallway, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. When she stepped into the hospital room, she saw her mother lying in the bed, looking pale and exhausted but smiling. And in her arms, wrapped in a soft pink blanket, was a tiny, perfect baby girl. "Meet Lily," Sarah whispered. Emma felt something inside her shift. Looking at her baby sister, so small, so fragile, she realized something. Her mother wasn't the only one responsible for this child now. She was too. Emma had never held a baby before, but when her mother gently placed Lily in her arms, something instinctual took over. The tiny infant barely weighed anything at all, her small body wrapped snugly in the hospital blanket, her delicate fingers curling slightly against Emma's hand. She was so quiet, her little chest rising and falling with soft breaths. Emma swallowed hard, afraid to move, afraid that even the slightest shift would somehow disturb this fragile, perfect life now resting against her. She could feel her mother's tired gaze on her, watching carefully. "You're going to be a great big sister," Sarah murmured, her voice hoarse from exhaustion but filled with warmth. Emma forced a smile, but inside, panic bubbled beneath the surface. She wasn't ready for this. She had spent so long helping her mother, trying to make sure things didn't fall apart, but taking care of a baby? That was different. That was permanent. That was something she didn't know how to do. But she couldn't say that. Her mother needed reassurance, not more stress. So instead, she nodded. "Of course," she said quietly. "I'll help you with everything." Sarah's smile faltered slightly, and for a split second, Emma thought she saw something else in her mother's expression: worry, doubt, maybe even guilt. But before she could ask about it, Sarah closed her eyes, her body giving into exhaustion. The next few days passed in a blur. The hospital discharged Sarah quickly, they couldn't afford a longer stay, and the bills were already piling up. Emma walked beside her mother as they made their way home, carrying Lily as carefully as she could while Sarah moved slowly, wincing with every step. The apartment felt even smaller now. Emma spent the first night sitting on the edge of her mattress, watching her mother and Lily sleep. Every time the baby stirred, Emma tensed, waiting for her to wake up crying. But for the most part, Lily slept peacefully, her tiny fists tucked under her chin. It wasn't until the third night that reality truly hit. Sarah had tried to go back to work that morning. Emma had begged her not to, she was still weak, still recovering, but Sarah didn't listen. "We don't have a choice," she had said, pulling on her jacket with slow, deliberate movements. "We need the money." Emma stayed home with Lily, terrified that she would do something wrong. The baby cried almost constantly, her tiny face scrunching up as if the entire world was too much for her. Emma tried everything, rocking her, singing to her, whispering the same soothing words she had heard her mother say, but nothing seemed to work. By the time Sarah returned home that evening, she looked worse than before. Her face was pale, her movements slow, but she forced a smile as she stepped inside. "How was she?" Sarah asked, setting down her bag. Emma, still holding the baby, sighed. "She cried a lot. I didn't know what to do." Sarah chuckled weakly. "Welcome to motherhood, kiddo." Emma flinched at the word. Motherhood. She wasn't a mother. She was just a kid herself. But as the days turned into weeks, she realized that her mother had less and less energy. She came home later, looking more exhausted each time, and Lily's care slowly shifted entirely onto Emma's shoulders. It wasn't intentional, Sarah wasn't neglecting her daughters, but there was simply no other option. Emma changed the diapers, fed Lily, rocked her to sleep when she fussed in the middle of the night. She learned to recognize the different cries, when Lily was hungry, when she was tired, when she just needed to be held. And all the while, her mother's condition continued to worsen. Sarah never complained, never admitted how much pain she was in, but Emma wasn't blind. She saw the way her mother winced every time she moved, how she clutched her stomach when she thought no one was looking. One night, as Emma was getting Lily ready for bed, she heard her mother coughing from the other room. It was deep, rattling, nothing like the soft, occasional coughs she had before. Emma hesitated, then placed Lily carefully in the makeshift crib beside her bed. She walked to the doorway and peeked into her mother's room. Sarah was sitting on the edge of her mattress, her back hunched, her hands gripping the blanket tightly. Her shoulders trembled. Emma's stomach twisted. "Mom," she whispered. Sarah stiffened, then quickly wiped her face before turning to Emma with a tired smile. "Hey, sweetheart. Is Lily asleep?" Emma didn't answer. She stepped closer, her eyes scanning her mother's face. She looked worse than ever. Dark circles under her eyes, her skin almost gray under the dim light. Something was really wrong. "You're sick," Emma said quietly. Sarah shook her head. "Just tired." Emma didn't believe her. But she didn't argue. Not yet. Instead, she sat down next to her mother, pressing herself against her side the way she used to when she was little. Sarah sighed, wrapping an arm around her, and for a moment, everything felt like it used to, before Lily, before the exhaustion, before the sickness. But deep down, Emma knew the truth. Things would never be the same again. The morning started the same way it always did, Emma waking up to Lily's soft cries, her mother already gone for work, the apartment cold and quiet except for the baby's restless whimpers. Emma groggily sat up, rubbing her eyes before leaning over the small crib to pick up her sister. Lily's tiny face was scrunched in discomfort, her little fists flailing slightly as she fussed. Emma had learned how to soothe her quickly. She held her close, whispering gentle words, rocking back and forth until the cries turned into small sniffles. She was getting better at this, better at reading Lily's moods, better at keeping her calm. But that didn't change the fact that she was exhausted. Balancing Lily on one arm, she made her way to the kitchen, where a nearly empty carton of milk sat in the fridge alongside a few slices of stale bread. She sighed, knowing she would have to make do with what they had. After feeding Lily and settling her back down, Emma got ready for the day. She had stopped going to school regularly. At first, she told herself she would go back once things became more stable, but the truth was, she couldn't. Not when her mother was barely home. Not when Lily needed her. She had tried bringing Lily to school once, thinking she could manage both, but the teachers immediately sent her home, telling her it was impossible. So she stayed home. At first, she thought it would be temporary. But as the weeks stretched into months, she realized no one was coming to help them. Her mother came home later and later each night, looking worse every time. Emma tried to bring it up once, tried to tell her that she needed rest, that she was working too hard, but Sarah just smiled, ruffling Emma's hair before heading straight to bed. Then came the night when everything changed. It started with a sound, a deep, wet cough from the other room. Emma sat up instantly, her heart pounding. She had been hearing her mother cough more and more lately, but this time, something about it felt different. It didn't stop. It just kept going, one painful gasp after another. Emma scrambled out of bed, rushing toward her mother's room. The moment she stepped inside, she knew something was wrong. Sarah was sitting on the edge of the bed, hunched over, clutching her stomach. Her face was pale, her lips slightly parted as she struggled to catch her breath. "Mom?" Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. Sarah's head lifted slightly, her eyes unfocused. "Go back to bed, sweetheart," she murmured, but even as she spoke, she swayed slightly. Emma didn't move. "You need a doctor," she said firmly. Sarah shook her head. "We can't afford." "You're sick," Emma interrupted, her voice rising. "You're really sick, and you know it." Sarah closed her eyes, breathing slowly, as if trying to steady herself. "I just need rest," she said, but her voice was weaker now. Emma felt panic bubbling inside her. She had never seen her mother this way before, never seen her look so fragile. She turned on her heel, heading for the phone. "Who are you calling?" Sarah's voice was sharper now, strained but laced with warning. Emma didn't answer. She didn't know what to do. Call a hospital? But they had no insurance, no money. What if they refused to help? What if her mother got angry? What if? A loud gasp pulled her attention back. Sarah had collapsed forward, barely catching herself on the edge of the bed. Emma froze. For a second, time felt like it had stopped. Then she was moving, running to her mother's side, her hands shaking as she tried to lift her up. "Mom! Mom, stay awake!" Sarah's breathing was ragged, her skin clammy. She was shaking. Emma's heart pounded against her ribs as she realized, with terrifying certainty, that this wasn't something that would pass on its own. She needed help. Now. With trembling fingers, she grabbed the phone and dialed the only emergency number she knew. Her voice broke as she whispered into the receiver. "Please, my mom won't wake up." The emergency operator's voice was calm, but Emma could barely process the words. Her hands were trembling so badly that she almost dropped the phone. The air in the room felt too thick, suffocating, pressing down on her as she struggled to force out the right words. "My mom," she stammered, glancing at Sarah, who was now slumped against the bed, barely responsive. "She's really sick. She collapsed, and she's not waking up." The operator asked for their address. Emma recited it from memory, her voice shaky, her breath uneven. "Is she breathing?" Emma hesitated before answering. Sarah's chest was still moving, but her breaths were shallow, ragged, as if each one took immense effort. "Yes," she whispered, "but it's not normal. She's barely moving." "Stay with her," the operator instructed. "Help is on the way. Do you have any family with you?" Emma's throat tightened. She glanced toward the crib where Lily was still sleeping, completely unaware of what was happening. "No," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's just us." The operator kept talking, asking questions, giving instructions, but Emma barely heard any of it. Her heart was pounding too hard. Every second felt stretched, unbearable, like time was moving in slow motion. She couldn't do anything but kneel beside her mother, gripping her cold fingers, willing her to wake up. She kept whispering, "Please, Mom. Just hold on." The sound of sirens pierced the silence outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the window, painting streaks of color across the dimly lit room. Emma scrambled to her feet as heavy footsteps approached the door. The knock came loud and firm. "Emergency services." Emma's hands fumbled with the lock as she yanked the door open. Two paramedics in navy uniforms rushed inside, their eyes immediately scanning the scene. One of them, a tall man with dark hair, crouched beside Sarah, checking her pulse. The other, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression, knelt next to Emma. "Are you her daughter?" Emma nodded quickly. "Did she say anything before she collapsed? Complaining of pain, dizziness?" Emma tried to remember. Her mind was racing. She was coughing a lot. And she kept holding her stomach, like it hurt. She said she was just tired, but it kept getting worse. The paramedics exchanged a glance. The woman gently touched Emma's shoulder. "You did the right thing calling us, okay? We're going to take care of her." Emma watched as they moved quickly, working with practiced efficiency. The male paramedic placed an oxygen mask over Sarah's face, while the other prepared to lift her onto a stretcher. Lily stirred in her crib, letting out a soft, sleepy whimper. Emma turned instinctively, her heart aching at the sound, but she forced herself to stay focused on her mother. As the paramedics secured Sarah onto the stretcher, Emma's stomach twisted with dread. "Where are you taking her?" "County General," the woman responded. "Do you have someone who can stay with you? A family member?" Emma shook her head. "No. It's just me and my sister." The woman hesitated. Emma could see the concern in her eyes, but there was no time to discuss it. "You can ride with us," she finally said. Emma didn't waste a second. She grabbed Lily from the crib, cradling her against her chest as she followed the paramedics outside. The cold air hit her like a slap, but she barely noticed. She climbed into the back of the ambulance, clutching Lily tightly as she sat beside her mother's unmoving form. The paramedics continued working, checking vitals, murmuring things she didn't understand. The doors slammed shut. The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, as Emma sat there, watching her mother's pale face, praying to any force in the universe that she would wake up. Because if she didn't, Emma had no idea what she was supposed to do next. The ride to the hospital felt endless. The sirens wailed through the night, drowning out every thought in Emma's mind, yet she felt like everything was happening too fast. Her mother lay motionless on the stretcher beside her, an oxygen mask covering her face, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. The paramedics worked quickly, checking her vitals, adjusting monitors, but their expressions were unreadable. Emma held Lily tightly against her chest, the baby stirring in her arms but not waking. The warmth of her small body was the only thing keeping Emma grounded. One of the paramedics, the woman with the sharp eyes, glanced at Emma. "How old are you, sweetheart?" 12, Emma answered automatically, her voice barely above a whisper. The paramedic hesitated, exchanging a quick glance with her partner before nodding. "And the baby?" "My sister," Emma said. "Lily. She's 2 months old." The woman's face softened for the briefest moment before she turned back to her work. "You're very brave," she murmured, more to herself than to Emma. The ambulance made a sharp turn, and Emma tightened her grip on Lily. The baby let out a small whimper but settled quickly, as if sensing her sister's distress. Emma couldn't afford to break down. "Not here. Not now." The moment they arrived at the hospital, everything became a blur of movement. The back doors flew open, and a team of nurses and doctors swarmed around her mother's stretcher, wheeling her inside before Emma could even process what was happening. She scrambled after them, her heart pounding as she struggled to keep up. The fluorescent hospital lights were too bright, the air smelled of antiseptic, and voices echoed from every direction. A nurse blocked her path just as they reached a set of double doors. "You need to wait here," the woman said gently but firmly. "But that's my mom," Emma protested, gripping Lily tighter. The nurse crouched slightly to meet Emma's eye level. "I know, sweetheart, but the doctors need to work on her right now. They're going to do everything they can. I promise." Emma opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. She felt frozen, her legs rooted to the cold tile floor. A moment later, the doors swung shut, cutting her off from her mother. She stood there in the hallway, staring at the closed doors, her mind racing. What if she never got to see her mother again? What if she had waited too long to call for help? She took a shaky breath, glancing down at Lily. The baby was awake now, staring up at her with wide, curious eyes. Completely unaware of how their entire world had just shifted. Emma felt her chest tighten. She had to be strong. A nurse approached her again, this time a different one, a younger woman with kind eyes. "Come with me, honey," she said softly. "Let's get you somewhere more comfortable while we wait for news." Emma hesitated but followed, her legs feeling like lead as she walked through the maze of hospital hallways. They stopped in a small waiting room with stiff chairs and a humming vending machine in the corner. "You're doing great," the nurse reassured her, leading her to a chair. "Is there anyone we can call for you? Family?" Emma shook her head automatically. "No. It's just us." The words felt heavier than ever. The nurse hesitated. "Okay," she said gently. "I'll check in on you soon, all right?" Emma nodded, watching as the woman disappeared down the hall. For the first time in hours, everything was quiet. She sat there, holding Lily close, rocking her gently even though she wasn't crying. She just needed something to do, something to focus on besides the terrifying unknown that lay beyond those closed doors. She didn't know how much time passed. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. Then, finally, a doctor stepped into the waiting room, scanning the area before his eyes landed on her. "Emma?" She sat up straight, her breath catching in her throat. The doctor walked over, crouching slightly so he wasn't towering over her. His expression was serious but not unkind. "Your mom is stable," he said. "But we need to talk." Emma gripped Lily's tiny hand, bracing herself for whatever came next. The doctor's words sent a wave of relief through Emma, but it lasted only a second before the weight of "we need to talk" settled over her like a heavy stone. She nodded, swallowing hard, her fingers tightening around Lily's tiny hand. The baby was still awake, her round eyes blinking up at the unfamiliar surroundings, unaware of the fear gripping her sister's heart. The doctor gestured to one of the empty chairs. "Why don't you sit down?" Emma hesitated but did as he asked. shifting Lily in her arms so the baby's small body rested against her chest. The doctor pulled up a chair across from her, his expression careful. "Your mother is stable," he repeated, "but she's very sick. The infection she's been fighting has spread, and because she didn't get medical care sooner, her body is struggling to recover." Emma's stomach twisted. "An infection?" The doctor nodded. "It started as something minor, but because she kept pushing through the pain, it developed into something much more serious. Her immune system was already weakened from the pregnancy, and working so much didn't give her body time to heal." Emma felt her throat close up. She had known her mother was struggling, but she hadn't realized it was this bad. Sarah had hidden her pain so well, always saying she was fine, always forcing herself to keep going because they had no choice. The doctor continued, his voice gentle but firm. "We're doing everything we can, but your mother will need to stay in the hospital for a while. We need to monitor her closely, and she'll need strong antibiotics and possible surgery." Emma's chest tightened. "For how long?" The doctor hesitated. "It's hard to say. It could be weeks." The room felt like it was spinning. Weeks. Weeks without her mother. Weeks where she and Lily would be alone. She shook her head. "She has to come home. We don't have anyone else. I have to take care of Lily, and her voice broke before she could finish. The doctor leaned forward slightly. "I know this is scary," he said. "But your mom needs to be here to get better. If she goes home too soon, she might not recover at all." Emma blinked rapidly, forcing back the tears burning in her eyes. She couldn't cry. "Not now." "Where are we supposed to go?" she whispered. The doctor hesitated, then glanced toward the door. "There's a social worker here who can help. We need to find a safe place for you and your sister to stay while your mom is recovering." Panic shot through Emma like ice. A social worker. She had heard enough stories to know what that meant. "No," she said quickly. "We're fine. I can take care of Lily." The doctor's face softened. "You're 12, Emma." She lifted her chin. "I've been taking care of her this whole time." His expression shifted slightly, something flickering behind his eyes, sympathy, maybe, or something even heavier. "I believe you," he said. "But it's not just about Lily. You need someone to take care of you too." Emma clenched her jaw, shaking her head. "I don't need anyone. We just need my mom to come home." The doctor sighed and stood up. "I'll have the social worker come talk to you. No one is going to take Lily away from you, okay? We just want to make sure you both have somewhere safe to stay." Emma didn't respond. She just sat there, staring down at Lily's tiny face as the doctor walked away. Her hands trembled slightly as she ran a finger over her sister's soft cheek. She couldn't let them take her. She had promised. Lily let out a small sigh and curled closer against her. Emma swallowed hard. If the system got involved, they would separate them. She knew they would. She had to think. She had to find a way to keep them together. No matter what. Emma sat in the waiting room, gripping Lily tightly against her chest, her mind racing. The doctor's words echoed over and over in her head. "A social worker is coming to talk to you," she knew what that meant. It didn't matter how kind they seemed or what promises they made, social workers took kids away. She had heard enough stories to know that once they got involved, there was no going back. She couldn't let that happen. Lily was all she had left. She had spent the last 2 months feeding her, changing her, rocking her to sleep. She had learned how to calm her cries, how to hold her just right, how to keep her safe. No one could take care of her the way she could. And now, in just a few moments, strangers were going to walk in and decide their future? Emma's chest tightened as panic crept in. She glanced toward the hospital doors. Should she run? Could she? It wasn't like before, when she had been able to slip away from the neighbors after her mother died. Here, people were watching. Cameras lined the hallways. And even if she managed to get out, where would she go? She had no money, no home, no way to keep Lily warm and fed. Her fingers curled into the soft fabric of Lily's blanket. She was trapped. A soft voice pulled her from her thoughts. Emma? She looked up sharply. A woman stood in front of her, dressed in neat slacks and a dark blue blouse. She wasn't old, maybe in her 40s, with kind brown eyes and a calm, patient expression. She didn't look like a monster. But Emma knew better than to trust appearances. I'm Laura, the woman said. I work with social services. Can I sit with you? Emma didn't answer. She just held Lily closer, as if her small body could form a shield between them. Laura didn't push. She simply lowered herself into the chair across from Emma, leaving space between them. You've been through a lot tonight, she said gently. And I know this must be scary. Emma kept her eyes on the floor. If she didn't talk, maybe the woman would leave. But Laura didn't leave. You did the right thing calling for help, she continued. Your mom is getting the care she needs because of you. Emma's throat tightened. I know you're worried about what happens next, Laura said, her voice still soft. But I want you to know something, I'm not here to take your sister away. Emma's eyes snapped up. Laura met her gaze, steady and calm. That's not what we do, she said. Our job is to make sure families stay together, as long as it's safe. Emma felt a flicker of hope, but she didn't let herself believe it. I know you've been taking care of Lily, Laura continued. And I can see how much you love her. But you're still a child yourself. You need someone to take care of you too. Emma's jaw tightened. I can take care of myself. Laura sighed. You shouldn't have to. Emma looked away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Laura leaned forward slightly. I have an idea, she said. Emma hesitated but finally looked back at her. There's a temporary care program for situations like this, Laura explained. It's not a foster home, not an orphanage. It's a place where families like yours can stay together while things get figured out. Emma frowned. Like a shelter? Sort of, Laura admitted. But smaller. More private. There's a couple I know, Mary and George. They take in kids and their siblings when parents are in the hospital or going through something difficult. It's just until your mom gets better. Emma narrowed her eyes. And what if she doesn't? Laura's face softened. Then we'll figure something else out together. Emma felt like the floor was slipping out from under her. She had spent so much time convincing herself that she could handle everything on her own. That she had to. But now, for the first time, someone was offering her a different option, one where she didn't have to fight alone. But could she trust them? Her eyes dropped to Lily's tiny face. She was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm raging inside her sister's mind. Emma exhaled shakily. She didn't have a choice. Okay, she whispered. Laura smiled gently. I'll call them now. Emma nodded, gripping Lily a little tighter. She didn't know what was coming next. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely alone. Emma sat in the back seat of Laura's car, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past. Lily was nestled in her arms, her tiny body warm and relaxed against Emma's chest. The rhythmic hum of the car engine mixed with the faint sound of the radio, but Emma barely noticed. She still wasn't sure if she had made the right decision. Everything in her told her not to trust social services, not to let strangers decide what happened to them. But she had no other options. Her mother was in the hospital, and they had nowhere else to go. At least, for now, Lily was still with her. Laura glanced at her through the rearview mirror. We're almost there, she said gently. Emma didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. Minutes later, the car pulled up to a small house on a quiet street. It was nothing like the rundown apartment she had grown up in. The house had a white picket fence, warm lights glowing from inside, and a porch swing that moved slightly in the evening breeze. It looked too perfect, too much like something out of a movie. Emma's stomach twisted. Laura parked the car and turned toward her. "This is Mary and George's home," she explained. "They take in kids and families who need a place to stay, just until things are stable again." Emma hesitated. "Are they nice?" Laura smiled. "You'll see for yourself." The front door opened before they even reached it. A woman in her 60s, with silver hair pulled into a loose bun, stepped onto the porch. She had a soft, kind face and was wearing a knitted sweater over her dress. Behind her, a tall man with graying hair and warm eyes stood with his hands in his pockets, watching them approach. "Emma," Mary said, her voice gentle. "It's so good to meet you." Emma held Lily a little closer, her fingers gripping the blanket tightly. Mary didn't push. She simply stepped aside, opening the door wider. "Come inside, sweetheart. You must be so tired." Emma hesitated for only a second before stepping inside. The house smelled like cinnamon and fresh laundry. It was warm, cozy, filled with soft lamps and shelves lined with books and framed pictures. It didn't feel like a stranger's house. It felt like a home. Mary led them into a small but comfortable room. A crib sat against one wall, and a bed with a thick quilt was beside it. A rocking chair was in the corner, and a nightlight cast a soft glow over the room. "This is for you and Lily," Mary said. "You can stay together here." Emma turned toward her, eyes wide. "We're not getting separated?" Mary's expression softened. "Of course not, sweetheart." Relief hit Emma so hard that she almost lost her balance. She walked over to the crib and carefully laid Lily down, watching as the baby stirred slightly before settling into sleep. When she turned back, Mary was still standing in the doorway. "I know this is a lot," she said. "But you're safe here. You and Lily." Emma didn't answer. She wasn't sure she believed in safety anymore. Mary didn't push. She just gave a soft smile. "Get some rest, dear. We'll talk in the morning." As the door closed, Emma sat on the bed, staring at the crib where Lily slept peacefully. She had spent so long trying to survive, trying to do everything on her own, that she had forgotten what it felt like to breathe. She wasn't sure how long she sat there, but at some point, exhaustion won. She curled up under the quilt, pulling it tightly around her, listening to Lily's quiet breaths. For the first time in months, she didn't fall asleep afraid. The ending of this story isn't about a perfect resolution, it's about survival, resilience, and the quiet possibility of hope. Emma's journey is heartbreaking, not just because of what she's endured, but because of how long she believed she had to endure it alone. She spent so much of her young life carrying the weight of responsibilities no child should bear, convinced that asking for help meant losing control. What makes this conclusion so powerful is that it doesn't erase her struggles. Her mother is still sick. Her future is uncertain. She's still just a child raising a baby. But for the first time, she's not fighting alone. The kindness of strangers, something she feared for so long, becomes her lifeline, not because they take over, but because they give her the one thing she's never had, a safe place to rest. This isn't a fairy tale ending. Emma will still face challenges. She will still have to fight for herself and Lily. But the difference now is that she has a chance. And sometimes, a chance is all someone needs to start rewriting their story.